And good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues, friends. I am extremely grateful to you all for taking the time. We are really at the busy end of the planning for landing a successful International Migration Review Forum in May. I have every confidence it will be a success. I see the number of people engaging in it, increasing numbers, increasing intensity, and all moving towards, I think, a successful outcome. Particular thanks to those colleagues in diplomatic missions in New York who will be running from this meeting to ongoing discussions taking place on the progress declaration. The schedules really are getting very crowded indeed. Today, we are having an hour to discuss one element of the forum that has perhaps not received as much attention as some of the other component parts, and that's namely the policy debate section. This will take place on the 18th of May from 3 to 6 p.m. and it will start with the delivery of summaries of the roundtables delivered by the co-chairs of those roundtables. Now, the policy debate will be facilitated by the network coordinator, that's the Director General of IOM, and I'm very pleased that moderating the discussion today will be his senior advisor, Liz Collette. The debate, as outlined in the modalities resolution, will focus on the challenges in the implementation of the Global Compact, including links with the 2030 Agenda, the capacity building mechanism, and, importantly, contemporary and emerging issues related to migration. The debate will also provide a space to consider possible guidance for the UN system to strengthen its efforts in improving system-wide effectiveness and coherence on these issues. So the purpose of this webinar really is to help us assist the coordinator in preparing for the policy debate. As we have done for the roundtables, the network is proposing to prepare a background note to support the discussions in the debate. This note will be based on the Secretary General's report, this discussion, contributions to the discussion space. Please don't just feel constrained by this 1 hour, but please do put down your thoughts in the discussion space, as well as the numerous conversations that we have all had over the preceding months in webinars such as this. To help today's discussions in advance of this meeting, we laid out some guiding questions in the hopes that they may be of assistance to you and to us all. Now, it's our hope that we can use this space creatively. We have an opportunity. This is the first IMRF. This is the first policy debate. The modalities, I think, give a degree of latitude to us all to take the discussion in ways that have a degree of ambition. Thus, while the roundtables perhaps look to a large extent at what has been done, as well as obviously where there are still gaps in our work on migration governance, the policy debate perhaps is an opportunity to reflect forwards, looking at the lessons that we have learned from the past 4 years through the COVID-19 pandemic and other situations, to develop these lessons and identify the tools and the areas in which we need to strengthen our efforts towards the pursuit of safe, orderly, and regular migration grounded in international cooperation. So these are some of the hopes I think that we have coming out of this discussion and looking ahead to the policy debate. And with that, those short comments, I will hand over to Liz Collette. She will moderate interventions from the floor, so please do put your virtual hands up or indicate a desire to speak in the chat box. And we will end this session with a few comments from Ambassador Nagaraj Kakanur, who is the Chief of Staff to the President of the General Assembly. Many thanks for being here today. Liz, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Director General, as I know he's looking forward to this debate enormously, to hear what chief concerns might be addressed, how the UN system can better support member states in the implementation of the GCM, but also what tools and innovations we might want to consider going forward, but really opening up what comes next. With that, I see that several people have already requested to take the floor, so I won't take up any more time. If I could turn first to Monsieur Montaga Diop, you have the floor.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup. Merci.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take the floor. I would like to thank you for this precious work you've been doing from the beginning with this really clear document that really gives a clear roadmap on our objectives and what we could reach through the GSM. I would like to refer to the policy debate. We've had the opportunity to be in Marrakesh when the GCM has been drafted, and we've seen what has been done since then, all the progresses to reach the implementation of the pact. And during the New York IMRF, I would like us to really focus on the stats, the free movement, the access of services, and we could try within this policy debate how governments can put their attention on these main objectives to protect migrants' life. I think also data is really, really important. And again, the access of services to get legal documents, to enable a registration system for the migrants. I think indeed that the priority is data, statistics, and then how arriving migrants can get registered, have access to services, and then how government can enable migrants to go into some activities, so there is a change in their life. So I would like to say that we should focus on critical topics. So migrants should focus on the objective related with statistics, the objective related with services, and we could review that step by step to see how governments or policies are failing to reach these objectives, and see how civil society and migrants could be heard to give a recommendation. Yeah, so that's my proposal. Thank you.
Many thanks for that very concrete and specific input, but also for putting migrants at the center of this debate from the outset. If I could turn now to Lilanthi Kumari from the Solidarity Center in Sri Lanka. Lilanthi, if you are still there, please, the floor is yours. Lilanthi, perhaps I can come back to you if you are unable to join at this particular moment, and turn to Radha Jouani from the Ministry of Economy and Planning in Tunisia. Radha. Hello.
Oui, bonjour. Bonjour, merci pour cette opportunité.
Thank you for giving me the floor. It's a pleasure for me to be able to intervene. It's always interesting to speak about migration policies. I agree with what my colleague just said about statistics, because having the data and the stats and reliable statistics about migrants is of paramount importance to feed the national policies. In Tunisia, for instance, we've launched a planning process for the period 2023-2025. So we want to consider the migration topic or migration policy so that we also tend to reach the Sustainable Development Goal. And the idea here is also to anchor this this migration culture inside all policy programs so that we can use good practices, avoid bad practices, and be able to review the failures and move forwards. So thank you once again for giving me the floor, and I hope that these exchanges will be really constructive. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, and many thanks for joining. I just want to offer Lilanthi an additional opportunity to take the floor if she's now able to join. If not, then perhaps we can move to Abdelhak Zegrari. Lilanthi?
Yes. Hi. Good evening. Sorry for the interruption.
Please go ahead.
Yes. This is actually very significant opportunity, and this is with regard to IMRF conference, which you all going to have in May. So on behalf of Sri Lanka, I would like to very briefly share my thoughts because with regard to GCM policies, so in the national level, Sri Lanka also would like to implement those GCM objectives. So with regard to this coming conference in May, so I hope that it is very effective for the Sri Lankan perspective as well. So I wish you all the best for the month of May event. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind wishes. And I think we are all hoping for some positive outcomes in May. If I can turn then next to Abdelhak Zegrari from the NGO ECOSOC UNESCO. The floor is yours if you are available to speak. Abdelhak Zegrari, if you are, okay, then perhaps we turn to the next person who has indicated an interest in speaking, Roxana Barbulescu from the University of Leeds, please.
Thank you very much. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to hear from so many cases. Compact is orientated and structured in the way we know. I just wanted to make the case of having more attention and more conversation structure also on the routes for low skill migration. We've seen a lot of conversation and opening through the pathways for high skilled or sectorial based immigration, but over the years and over the last 20 years, we've seen less and less routes for legal migration for low skilled legal migration, and this is really worrying. This is what most people tend to access. And this also leads to opening more trafficking, more human smuggling and other situations and cases of exploitation. So I just wanted to make the case of kind of having and carrying this message forward of giving more attention and looking what is going on as well with the legal routes for low-skilled migration, because they tend to disappear over the last 2 decades. We've seen fewer and fewer and fewer. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. And I think what we've seen over the last few years is something of a shock to many of our migration systems in terms of how we perceive low and high skilled and how we perceive the necessity of different workers in the workforce, and particularly migrant workers. So this is an opportunity to reflect on some of those perhaps assumptions that we've had in the past that may not be holding to the same level, and how we might want to address that, not only through the GCM, but in the way we think about our immigration policies. If I can change, I see a number of hands going up. And if I could turn to Vladimir Pascual Revelo. So if you are available to take the floor.
Thank you so much. My name is Vladimir from Romania, which is a migrant association for migrants in Spain. We want to know what the challenges continue to be for us as migrants. We know that this is recovering from the pandemic, climate change, racism, xenophobia, gender-based considerations, and we know that rights of migrant workers, irregular pathways, trying to protect migrants' lives. In Central America, there's thousands of people that die. They're basically disappeared persons, migrants. And so we form part, as Roma Y, of the Latin American bloc for protection of lives. And so we would like to put an end to detentions of migrants as well. Deportations are also of concern for us, deportations of children, especially in conflict situations, and general access to services, as well as access to a voice that we should have as migrants. And we do ask ourselves whether member states have the same interests as us. We know that the participation of organisations should be able to assign different budgets for us. And so I think that it is really essential for us to be able to have that. And I think that oftentimes within these meetings, if you're not up for going in a certain under a certain category, well, they don't let you in. You're just not in keeping with what they want to deal with. Okay, thanks very much. That was it.
Thank you very much, sir. The next name I see on the list with a hand up is Castro Abdallah, who is from the NGO Fenisol in Lebanon. Please, yours.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to take the floor. I have a small comment to make, if I may. We are discussing the issue of migration, but this is a major problem for us in our country. Unfortunately, in some circumstances, this is becoming very critical, because when we talk about the Convention 29 of ILO, which is related to kind of slavery, it is very important for us to highlight these practices that are still being witnessed. And we see that the migrants are being exploited. And we see that also there's child labor, particularly in the Middle East and in Lebanon, as well as other Arab countries in general. This is a main problem when we talk about child labor, and particularly the underage young girls that also are being exploited. So I think that the IMRF should address such issues, and this is a message that we raise to you that you can convey as well. I think that there should be a pressure or lobbying with the UN and UN organizations, particularly the IOM and ILO, to focus and push forward on such topics.
Excuse me, sir, I believe you're muted. If you could unmute.
Hello.
There you are. We can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize for this technical problem. So I was saying that we have a problem when it comes to migration, particularly when we address the issue of migrant exploitation. And as I was saying, particularly when it comes to the ILO Convention 29, with the slavery and the indecent work, this is a problem that we are facing in our country, particularly given the economic crisis. This is also not only impacting migrants, but as well child labor and girls, underage girls that are also being exploited. We see that there's a child marriage that is on the rise, and there's a kind of exploitation of children of migrants in the Arab region. As an IMRF, I think that the message that we needed to convey particularly is to highlight this problem, but also to lobby and exert pressure for sanctions to be imposed. Unfortunately, this is a problem, and there is no social guarantee or safety that is in place. There are no protection measures that are being provided, whether health protection or social protection or any different type of measures. I think that all UN organizations that are working with migrants or labor, whether the ILO or IMO should be focusing on these different topics. And I think that we need to increase the pressure on member states to amend their legislations to limit such exploitation of migrants and to provide migrants with their rights. Because what we are doing right now is addressing the effect of the problem and not the root causes of the problem. So I hope that the different documents and messages will be also available in Arabic, whether translated or issued in Arabic, because we see that a lot of people in the region do not have the ease of reviewing the documents in English. But so again, I reiterate, if possible, to have the documents in Arabic as well. Thank you.
Many thanks. And I think we all agree that the issue of exploitation, in particular the gender dimension of trafficking and exploitation, is something that we must really focus on, not least because of the severity and deep impacts that has on all communities around the world. If I could turn now to Wajdi Aidi from the city of Sfax in Tunisia. Please, you have the floor.
شكرا.
Thank you. I have two comments to make, if I may, given our discussions today and in preparation for the IMRF. I think there's a direct link or indirect link with the GCM. I would like to focus on two main issues: the role of municipalities and local governments. I am talking here in the name of my city, Sfax. I am a member of the Council of Municipality of Sfax in Tunisia, and also a member of the Political Council for the local cities federation. I think that the role of cities and municipalities in discussions and debates is still limited. So we need to highlight the role and the important role of municipalities and local governments in developing any real governance of migration. Cities and local communities and all their stakeholders, civil society, NGOs, play an important role in dealing with the issues of migration and migrants, particularly in times of crisis. And this is what we have seen under the pandemic. So cities should be given the right voice in any kind of international policy in place, because so far we are still being kept under the umbrella of the state and being the representative at the international level. But I think that there should be a more important role given to cities per se and to local communities and authorities in any dialogue or discussion on the development of real migration policies. As cities, as local actors, we deal daily with migrants. We are daily engaging with migrants. And so any kind of real governance of a migration should have a civil society representative and the city's voice that is taken seriously and well represented in such a dialogue and in any development and review of the GCM. Thank you.
Many thanks. And I know that the Network Secretariat has worked incredibly hard over the last years to really try to ensure that those voices are heard, particularly at the local level. And I hope that we continue to do so during the IMRF and indeed in this policy debate. If I could turn now to Makoura Onipogui, who is, if you could introduce yourself, and if I could ask that to all speakers, it's not always possible to know who you're representing in this discussion. If you could introduce yourself and please make your intervention.
Bonjour. Oui,
Hello.
bonjour.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Oui. So I'm Onipogui Makoura. I'm from this SDSC. Sorry, there is a very bad connection. We cannot hear her.
Madam, there's a very bad connection. Perhaps you could turn your video off and then we can hear you more
Je
clearly.
voulais juste intervenir. Au début, d'accord. Oui, la vidéo est déjà éteinte.
I think that's better. Thank you very much.
Des pays africains font partie des 150.
So the African countries are among the 152 countries who have signed in 2018 the GCM. But the state of play that has done my network shows that there are still mid and long term of the COVID-19 pandemics. Africa has lost all the efforts made in terms of socio-economic progresses. And that has led to migration or desperate migration journey towards other countries for people who were hoping to get a better life. Everywhere in Africa, inflation has become a major problem. We need to fight for collective human rights. Women and children are badly treated. My husband doesn't work anymore. Companies are getting closed, and all that leads to migration. We've been talking a lot. We've signed agreements, and I have the impression that nothing has changed. So despite what I said, in Africa, some associations are getting into networks, such as some unions, to try to ratify some conventions. And we are really putting a lot of our hopes on the IMRF so some light can be shed on the migration topics we are facing.
Many thanks. I appreciate you raising not just the health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, but really the economic impacts, which are along with those health impacts, not just being felt now, but are likely to reverberate in the years to come, and the need for us to address that as part of a broader set of issues, including how we manage to get back onto the path of Agenda 2030 and regain lost ground. If I could turn now to Rima Kalush, who is with the Migrant Rights Organization. Rima, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to keep my video off because I know my Wi-Fi is not very good. So yes, I am from migrantrights.org. We work on the Middle East corridors and particularly in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. I just had a brief comment. I would love to see a reflection on the inherent precarities in temporary labor migration systems. We've seen them used for states to kind of avoid responsibility for workers, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it also bleeds into so many other issues, whether it's, ethical recruitment or it's access to social protection. And I think, it also really deprives migrants of access to political and social rights, which are really essential for participating in processes like this one. So, I would also love to see examples of where maybe it's done a bit better. But yeah, I think in general, the way that we've seen it, at least in our region, it's just, it's really not living up to, I think, the ideals of the compact. So I would love to hear from others about that as well. Thank you.
Many thanks. And I think that follows on from the previous commenter that some of these issues were longstanding and in some cases exacerbated due to the pandemic. If I could turn to Thais La Rosa, and if you could introduce yourself and your organization. Thank you.
Hi, hello. I am Thais La Rosa. I work for the Center of Human Rights and Citizenship here in Brazil. We are the only Brazilian organization from the civil society that is participating in this forum. And this concerns me because the Brazilian civil society participated throughout the whole process of the GCM. The participation was massive, actually, and the Brazilian government withdrew Brazil's participation from the GCM. And this is something that we thought would be an opportunity for us to talk about the impacts of not participating in the Global Compact, in the sense that migration in Brazil and everywhere else in this world is a topic that demands attention at this point and demands a cohesive answer coming from the government, the civil society that is organized, and also from migrants living in Brazil. I think it would be important to bring a little bit of the context we had been living under during the pandemic. Between March 18th, 2020 and January 25, 2021, no less than 28 decrees placing restrictions on entry into Brazil were published. These decrees are strict and discriminatory against people coming from Venezuela and determine the suspension of asylum requests, immediate deportation or repatriation, and administrative, civil, and criminal liability of migrants as a consequence of non-compliance. These measures violated the principle of non-refoulement, the right to immediate access to asylum application procedure, and the principle of non-criminalization of migration, all of which are provided for in Brazilian migration refugee laws. Also, summary and collective deportation and repatriation are illegal practices, as they're not provided for in Brazilian migration law. So this measurements that were happening during the pandemic is something that we wish to discuss further as a collective group and internationally as well. And because of our removal from the pact, it has impact on our civil society and also on the migrants that decide to come to Brazil.
Many thanks. And I think you raise an important issue that's really reverberating around the world, which is the impact of travel restrictions on all travelers. Obviously, everyone has been impacted, but particular impacts then on those who maybe have particular vulnerabilities, maybe seeking asylum, but also may find themselves stranded in countries, often without employment or without support. And I think this is an issue which is still, to some extent, unresolved. And we may need to think further about, should future health crises rise, how we will deal with those things in the future to improve that coordination, but also reduce that sense of inequality and discrimination that I think has emerged. If I might turn right now to Celine de Cruz, and if I could ask you to introduce your organization as well. I have just an acronym, and I'm afraid the 3 C's escape me. So please take the floor.
So it's the International Center for Climate Change and Development, located in Bangladesh. And the whole idea of migration with respect to other countries is something that we understand. What I would like to focus on is migration that happens inside the country on account of poverty. And that could be both economic and non-economic reasons, both because of coming for jobs, but also because of reasons like climate change. And I have worked very closely in the front lines in the city of Mumbai with migrants for 20, 25 years who've been in the same place, voted every single year, and yet treated as illegal and not being part of the city, deprived of basic services. So I feel this is a whole category where we need to link both climate change and poverty and talk of migration and creating migrant-friendly cities that have to be the new norm. And how do we do that without alienating the so-called citizens of the city?
Thank you very much. And I think your words were echoed also in the recent IPCC reports looking at the links between poverty, migration, and climate change, and the need to really invest further in not just understanding those impacts, but really then the action to mitigate them. If I could turn now to Fernando de la Mora from the Mexican Mission, please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Muchas gracias a la red por organizar
Thanks to the network for organizing this meeting.
Sorry, 1 second. I think I'll just continue in English. It's been very good to hear from so many civil society organizations about the work that's being done on the ground. And we're really at a critical time right now in terms of the negotiations of the Progress Declaration. So I've heard also so much emphasis on the travel restrictions and the impact of COVID. And yet we shouldn't forget that we're reviewing now 4 years since the GCM came into force. So we should take into consideration also the pre-pandemic realities and those situations and circumstances in which the pandemic has actually accelerated some parts of the GCM implementation, such as consular cooperation. So some of the things that have been mentioned at this meeting fall outside of the scope of the GCM, but others are very much relevant. And from the part of the Mexican mission, and we'll all have to leave in a few minutes just to continue negotiating, but I want to encourage all of the civil society organizations that are present in this particular webinar to proactively reach out to your delegations in New York. Let them know the work that you're doing on the ground. Let them know the advances that are being made and also the challenges that remain. Because the words that we're negotiating right now matter, and they matter for the next 4 years, and they can help us in forging partnerships. The GCM is built on a whole of society and whole of government approach. You are at the forefront of that, and now is the time when governments require your expertise. So thanks so much for a very interesting dialogue.
Thank you very much. And I think those words are hugely appreciated as we're nearing the end of this discussion. I think a lot of huge issues have been raised, enduring issues, some of which are a hangover from the last 4 years and our experiences, and some of which we still see looming ahead, particularly the impacts of climate change. But many of our intervenants have really spoken to the need to think about protection and vulnerability and place migrants at the center of the next phase of GCM implementation, which I think remains absolutely critical. And I'm waiting now to see if there are any additional people who would like to intervene at this moment. We have a couple of more minutes before I hand over to our concluding remarks. If you can let yourselves be known, now would be your perfect moment.
Yes, this is Marta Benavides from El Salvador.
Please join. Take the floor.
I wrote something in there because in the chat because my internet is not so good. We are very concerned about many of these things that are happening right now in front of our very eyes. All these wars are creating terrible conditions in all kinds of ways. I don't see that we are really talking and taking that into consideration. Like the Ukraine war, they're already talking that probably it's going to take about 10 years or more. And I think there's more because I see that countries are putting a lot of money into arming themselves. And, you know, I just think that they are preparing themselves more to war. And then there are many countries like in Latin America that we have suffered a lot of problems with a very, you know, very dictatorship kind of governments that is forcing people right now inside of the countries in jail. And, you know, and many have had to go on exile, which is not even official. People cannot get back. And all these things, people don't understand all this. And for example, in terms of the Ukrainian situation, 100,000 of them are being allowed immediately into the United States with many supports, you know, all kinds of supports that people need when they have to leave their countries. But we are not talking about all the other wars and all the people that were at the borders waiting already. And the citizens of the countries that are behind a lot of these disturbances, which are in the global north, don't have the slightest idea even what it means to be in exile or all these things that we're talking about. The cryptocurrencies are also part of the major problem. And we are talking now about the implementation of the SDGs as a solution, but that's just a piece of the piece. If really we are going to do that, we got to work with these three agendas in a very, you know, intrinsic way to themselves and transversally. And it is really a major issue of peace. We don't need a piece of peace. And more there is going to be the gig economy. Well, I wrote it there because I didn't think that I was going to have a chance, but things that I'm doing, I think that one of the major problems is that countries are spending a lot of money in taking care of migrants in all their needs, and then they will continue in the gig economies as themselves as they come from one country having gig economy, which is, you know, just jobs here and there, and they are not working on the policies and the root causes of these problems. And that's what these the SDGs, the Habitat, and Paris 2020 are about. I think that we have to think that we really have to work seriously, you know, in all the transformations that are needed in our countries, that are the conditions that force us out. Also, I am myself in exile right now because I oppose the kinds of things that are being done against the young people. And, you know, any of us that work for human rights, you know, we are considered to be supportive of criminals. And this is really very hard. So I'm just saying, we got to make sure that the whole planet, the whole world is a sanctuary for nature and peoples. And each country should be that too. So I'm sorry that I'm talking so fast, but I don't know how soon you're going to close. So I just wanted, that's why I wrote it. Take care. Gracias.
Many thanks. And I appreciate that the heartfelt sentiments and the need to take care of both our planet and our people. We have two final hands that have been raised. So perhaps I could turn to you quickly. Akiachi, please, sir, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi, my name is Akiachi. I'm from Migrant at Work in Birmingham, UK. So I'm a former child laborer from the Ivory Coast who migrated to France and then to UK. And what I wanted to say in terms of labor exploitation and how the international community protect our right as a migrant in Europe. Recently, we were involved in a project called My Friendly City, funded by the European Union to allow us migrants to come up with our own ideas to empower ourselves, to protect ourselves in Europe. And from that project, we have developed a concept which has been working pretty much for us migrants in the UK to protect our rights. So we make a distinction between modern slavery and a new term we are developing, which we call homegrown slavery. So this has been working really well in the UK, and we've been supported by the United Nations Global Compact and several other organizations. And I think it's really important for this kind of initiative to be put in place to allow us migrants who have lived experience to be at the forefront of the fight against labor exploitation, because what we see in Europe, we always talk about labor exploitation and modern slavery because we migrants have insecure immigration status. But what we see through the homegrown slavery concept we have developed is we see that many migrants, even those who migrate through safe immigration, are pushed into labor exploitation through domestic migration policies which conflict with labor law and trade laws. And I think there is no focus on homegrown slavery, a lot of focus on modern slavery, which for us we see as different concept. And it's really important to put us, a migrant with lived experience, at the table where we can propose idea to be able to, for us to be able to protect our right, because we are the one on the ground and we have these concepts and these ideas, and we would love to share that with anyone in this forum.
Thank you very much. And I think an important point to raise is not just the fact that migrants are innovators, and innovators in terms of protecting rights, but also innovators in terms of thinking of new ways to work together in a whole of government way. I take the point that coherence across government and policies, whether it be trade, whether it be employment, whether it be immigration, whether it be social protection, need to be brought together in one way. And also thinking through the role of migrants and migrants in that development of those policies is extremely important. So thank you very much for your intervention. If I can turn finally to Sonia Plaza from Nomad and the World Bank. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Nice to see all of you, and thank you for these nice discussions. I wanted to follow up on the previous speaker, and this is a call for all the organizations. If you read the revision number 2 of what is going to be on the declaration, you can see very clear that they changed the language, and they said, they don't say several or some states. They said states have reduced the recruitment costs and have a ban recruitment costs. And this is go along with the slavery that you were mentioning. It's not true. With the pandemic has been an increase in recruitment costs, and you see, for example, the Federation of Malaysian Employers are requesting that the employees are the ones who pay the recruitment costs. And we are seeing all what happened in the Qatar, despite that they're doing some regulations, still there's a lot of, if you wanted, modern slavery, because the migrants are paying very high recruitment costs. And on top of that, you have a lot of the smuggling, and you see the explosion of the smuggling right now around the world, just only to look at the United States border in Mexico. So I think that from the part of the civil society, there's need more work to really look and document the SDG 10.7.1 on data to really show in the revision number 2, is it really true that the recruitment costs have been reduced? Is it really true that the recruitment costs have been eliminated? That's one point. And the other second point of alert, very quickly, let's pay attention into the inequality or the tilted, because now the whole attention of the migration has been shifted to Ukraine and to Europe. But a lot of the migrants are going to be impacted, because just to give us an example in terms of who is going to receive more protection right now, everybody, of course, is a huge attention for the Ukraine, but this has not to be in detriment of the support to the other migrants around the world. So that's my 2 comments on this one. I hope that we can do. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Sonia. And I think an important point, particularly to retain balance at a time when we see multiplying crises and multiplying concerns around the world. And it's difficult to maintain attention across the board. I would like to thank you all for these inputs, which are all extremely well taken and will be relayed to the Director General as we prepare for the policy debate to come. I would now like to turn for closing remarks, conscious that many of you have to run to another meeting in just a few minutes' time. Closing remarks by Ambassador Nagaraj Kakanur, who is the Chef de Cabinet of the 76th President of the General Assembly. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, colleagues, friends, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining from. I'm very honored to participate in this webinar on behalf of the President of the 76th session of the General Assembly, His Excellency Abdullah Shahid. I would like to thank all the delegations and civil society organizations and all relevant stakeholders for their robust participation, highlighting and exchanging perspectives on critical contemporary and emerging issues related to migration, especially in relation to the preparations for the policy debate to be scheduled as part of the IMRF on 18th May. These engagements continue to guide us as we aspire to effectively share progress on the implementation of all aspects of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. It's very heartening that your contributions continue to demonstrate that our preparations are leading in the right direction. Let us build on this positive momentum prior to as well as during the forum. Friends, since its adoption, the Global Compact has demonstrated that it is a comprehensive and relevant framework that can effectively address challenges faced by migrants and host communities. The urgency of implementing its provisions has become especially salient following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which both illustrated and compounded many of the difficulties already being faced by migrant communities. The Global Compact is now a source of guidance for all stakeholders, endeavoring to shape a global migration regime that is predictable, adaptable, and holistic, and also one that factors in the human dimension of this phenomena. The President looks forward to the policy debate in the upcoming International Migration Review Forum, where we will reflect on how well we have implemented the Global Compact on migration, while drawing attention to areas where more resources, capacity building, and cooperation is needed. The debate will facilitate a deeper understanding of some of the pressing issues, concerns, and challenges relevant to migration. This will in turn enable governments and global stakeholders to effectively craft migration policies that are just, that are humane, and are mutually beneficial to migrants and host communities alike. The President invites governments and stakeholders to reflect on these issues in anticipation of the policy debate, so that the international community is better informed and better positioned to advance the Global Compact, as well as to strengthen the linkages with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Additionally, the President encourages governments and stakeholders to propose guidance criteria for the United Nations system to strengthen and streamline its efforts in helping member states implement the Global Compact. Dear friends, we are now approximately a month away from the inaugural International Migration Review Forum. We must consider some of the critical aspects that will contribute to a successful IMRF. The President urges delegations to invite your heads of state of government to participate in person in the forum with bold ambitions, while recalling that success depends on a collective vision, preparation, and action. The President also encourages delegations to consult extensively with national counterparts and all relevant stakeholders as you prepare your national strategies towards the forum. A comprehensive and synergistic effort harnessing whole of government and whole of society approaches is extremely vital for the deliberations of the IMRF to lead to a positive outcome. We call on states and stakeholders to consider making pledges for concrete actions that can foster bilateral, regional, and international cooperation that helps us continuously improve the rights and the well-being of migrants and host communities alike. And we look forward to welcoming all of you in New York in the month of May. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ambassador, and many thanks to all of you for participating this afternoon, and good luck for the next round of negotiations, which I understand will be forthcoming. I look forward to the active participation of all of you at the IMRF next month, and I am committed to preparing an excellent policy debate so we can all engage on the critical challenges of the future. Many thanks, and I'm wishing you a good morning, afternoon, and evening. Thank you.